Hey guys, Big J here. Preseason games are done, and today I'm going to show you my team for the 2023 AFL Supercoach season. Now, there is a couple of weeks to go, but this is what I'm preseason. Mate, I love preseason games because the idea of structures just go out of the window. The teams we had 2 weeks ago are not the teams that we have now, and boy oh boy, there's been some major changes. I think with my team, there's not been that many compared to what I was running before. Structure wise, yes, but the players I brought in were guys that have been talked about the entire time. I think with Supercoach in general, that's really important, and that's kind of what I've done. You don't really want to bring in people into your team who came out and had a blistering, preseason game too, especially with footy scores kind of coming out, super coach scores coming out at the same time. Um, it's a bit sketch if you bring them in if you haven't heard anything over the preseason, but some of these players you really have. So let me show you the team. I guess the idea with Supercoach this year is that you want to try and ramp up to full premium as quick as you can. Obviously, we've spoken about that in previous videos and with other guests we've had on the channel. The acceleration to full primo is the thing that you really need to do. Last year, we saw some teams do that, before round 10 or on round 10, which is insane. But being able to have a team of guys who are going to score you 100 plus every week is a lot better than the teams that are going to do the same thing 3 or 4 weeks down the track. Let's start off with the forward line. So I think the forward line is probably the same forward line that a lot of people are running. I know I've seen Abdul, I've seen a few other teams that have come out recently kind of show off this forward line. Sadly, Cornelio's not in there. I know I've been hamping on about how good he is at the moment, and he is. He's a bloody fantastic player. But I'm just not sure of his role. I think he came out of the preseason game 2 with some injuries, or at least some injury clouds, and it's really kind of put me off the pick. He was the one out of the 3 premiums, well, out of the 4 premiums I originally had, who was the one that could potentially go. Obviously, he's got the scoring, but I think you might be able to pick him up at the same price a little bit down the track. Whereas the other guys, barring Dunkley, you really won't be able to. So, starts off with Josh Dunkley. The game with Brisbane really showed what he could do, really showed the midfield mix, and showed his scoring potential. I mean, he's not going to score 160 every week, but he should still be F1. And if you don't have him, you're in a bit of strife. Next up, we've got Connor Rosie. The kid's put out there's been multiple articles put out about him and how he wants to continue on with form coming into 2023. The preseason games have definitely shown that, even with Butters and other people into the team. They're really going the Rosie show, and that's why I've got him in there. He will not be 513K for a while, well, ever again, basically. If you don't have him, you're in a bit of strife. Similar, I think, with Tim Taranto. The game versus North, he was probably into, first or second gear. The preseason game 2, he did really well. Yes, they got beat, but him and Hopper, who I'll put in the midfield, were kind of the shining lights and were shown why they were both people who Richmond invested in their future or future picks and picks from last year in getting into their team. The next guy up, I think everyone kind of knows, is Errol Goulden. So last year he had some massive scores and then kind of tapered off a little bit towards the end. He's come into the preseason. There's no Kennedy. Mills is probably playing a bit more backline hybrid role. Look out to get him as a DPP option. He's just doing really well. And I think a lot of people are jumping on him. He scored like a 188. Yes, Mills I don't think was playing, but even if that goes down to a 110, 120 at 480 or 470K, how do you not have him in your team? At least to start with, at least kind of to see what's going to happen there. Next up, we have Big Tanner Braun. Now, there's a lot of options for me to be able to swap players around in this team, which is one of the really big things I love about it. Maybe Braun becomes someone like a Machito Owens, who seems to be dominating that St Kilda forward line, who comes in at a much cheaper price. But Braun looks to be getting mass mid-minutes in Geelong. Yes, Hawkins and Jeremy Cameron weren't playing that preseason 2 game. Yes, Geelong did really well. Well, not really well, but they did okay. But at 311K, I think it's kind of worth the risk. He only needs to average something like a 90 to be worth the value, to be able to sideways into a fall and premium from the midfield who gets DPP, or someone else maybe like a Cornelio with a rookie. I can do a lot worse at F5, and I think he's a better option than someone like a Zeeble, at least to start with. Flanders comes in as my next pick. Now, at the start, I was talking about players who have been talked about a lot in the preseason and guys who I really think, are showing their colors during the preseason games. Flanders really follows that mold, and he's going to be fantastic for us in our Supercoach teams. He doesn't need to score 90s. He doesn't need to score 100s to be viable. But a score of a 75, which is pretty easy to get to, like rookies will be able to average 75. If Flanders can do that in a GWS midfield, which I think he can, if he's not kicking goals, he's taking CBAs, which is really good. If he can do that, he's going to make us enough money to upgrade to a premium. Heck, Sam Flanders could be someone like a Max Gorn who's fallen in cash come round 6 or 7 when he gets forward DPP. Now, the bench guys at the moment are just really place fillers. But at the moment, I've got Sam Sturt, scored at 80 in the preseason game. So just kind of looking for options there. I did have Philippou, but cost and money-wise has kind of made me turn off the pick. I can mess around with the team a little bit and get him in, but at the moment, this is what I'm running with. And next up on the list is Fergus Green. So Joe and I have talked about in the preseason games and all your team reviews about bringing in key forwards. But Green looks to be the focus of that Hawthorn forward line. The guy kicked something like 50 goals last year in 20 games for Box Hill. He's on fire, and to not have him at the moment is crazy. Instant Gunston replacement has really taken over the spot from a lot of other guys who I think were competing with him. Mature Ager should do really well for them. And for us in Supercoach, he doesn't need to score a lot, but being on the bench, he can generate cash pretty quickly. Accelerate your cash gen, things like that. 40s, 50s, 60s, perfect for us. Offload him, come round 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then bring in someone else who's going to play as well. The ruck line. The ruck line's really kind of the tricky one at the moment. I had Witts and Draper to start with. At the moment, I've kind of changed that around a little bit. Frio's kind of early run of players, early run of teams that they've got has really made me go and pick Sam Darcy. So that's who I've got now. He came out of the preseason game with a bang. Obviously, Jackson didn't play, but even if Jackson plays and forces him to go to the forward line, I think he can still do well in kick goals, which is kind of what I've gone in here. I do have the potential to move some cash around, downgrade and upgrade a couple of players to maybe go for a Witts. I don't have a lot of money remaining, but for now, that's the option. Next up, we've got is Rowan Marshall. So the big thing with Marshall for me was how does he work in a more depleted forward line for St Kilda? There'd been some talk that maybe Tom Campbell or some other players had come in who were going to move him around and push him around a bit. But watching the preseason 2 game, boy, oh boy, if you do not start this guy, you're in a lot of trouble. At 500K, you can't do any better. And that's kind of why I brought him in. He should be good for 100 plus every week, which is all you need from these ruckline players. And you're paying, a 90 to get a 100 plus player. I know a lot of people have gone Andrew, but I'm still hot on the Nick Matten train. GWS have a lot of Sunday and late Saturday games, so he's a perfect loophole with the DPP to be able to kind of change a lot of captaincy options and things like that, which is kind of what I've gone for here. He isn't as cheap as, he's cheaper than a Mac Andrew, but I love the fact that he's not going to play, which is kind of the big thing. You'd hate for your loophole player, like we had with a lot of people last year. Guys got put on as a sub, thinking, oh, no, they won't play. They come on and score like a 20 and people's captaincy options are ruined. Can't have that this year in 2023. Let's do the defense. Let's kind of change it up a little bit. So in the defense at the moment, I've gone Sam Doherty. Now, Carlton's an interesting one. If you look at the other options we've got there, Sinclair's doing well, but I think he's going to share a little points with someone else who I've got in my team. Sicily, yes, he's doing really well, but I think he's a little bit overpriced for what we get. Tom Stewart, a similar thing. Apparently, he only does well in Geelong, and they don't have many Geelong games. I think they're sharing the ball a little bit more in that back line at the moment. So it's not the Tom Stewart show there. Jordan Dawson, I'd love to have in my team, but I physically just can't afford him. I think he's going to drop in price a little bit as he gets moved along the wing across the halfback line as well. Something we spoke about in our team review video, in our player profile video on Jordan Dawson. If he's not stuck in the halfback or really high halfback wing, he's in a lot of trouble, and I think he's going to get moved around too much to start with. So that's why I've kind of picked Doherty. He does well off the halfback. The guy took kick-ins and then he took CDAs. He's on fire, and if you don't have him, you're really going to regret it. Next up on the list is someone who's a bit of a pod. Isaac Cumming. Now, if you look at Isaac Cumming's scoring in the past few years, it's constantly going up, which is what we want to see. Himmelberg moving forward, I really don't think he's going to go into the back line anytime soon. People I've spoken to and how I've expressed this to, I'm like, hey, Himmelberg's kicking 2, 3, 4 goals a game. GWS are not going to put him in the back line. They need goal scorers. They need to win games. They need to appease the fans and appease the kind of higher ups at the club. They're not going to be moving Himmelberg back, at least to start with. If they do, I'll reassess the pick. But Cummings the guy for me at the moment. He's rated elite almost in every skill if you look up stats on him. And boy, oh boy, I think he's due for a big year. The guy's taking some kickouts at GWS, which is fantastic as well, and really dominates that halfback role. I don't know if Whitfield's going to do as much as Cumming, and that's why I've picked him right at the moment. Next up on my list is Jordan Ridley. Now, this is one of the picks that I'm not so happy about. I can swap him to a Dacos or some other players, but watching the Essendon game, it really looked like he was going to be dominating that back line. They wait for him to come to this back line centre square to go and give him the ball so he can take kickouts. They wait and use him as a distributor off the halfback. If he's not taking intercepts, he's doing kickouts. He's being used kind of as that free player across the back line. It worked really well. Watch the Abdul video, Supercoach Godfather video about it as well. But Ridley's kind of the pick for me at the moment. He's only valued at, a 91 or a 92. So if he comes out and scores 100 in the first few weeks, you can still offload him to one of these uber primo guys if the pick starts to wane, which is something that you have to be careful of. But at the moment, he's in my side. Next one we have is someone who I've kind of been talking about a little bit. But that's big Liam Jones. So coming across from Carlton, obviously I think it's basically like the quaffle, like the lower level of the VFL. There were high hopes for him at this price. And I think kind of the preseason 2 game, yes, it was North Melbourne, but the Bulldogs didn't play an intra-club. In the intra-club, he had really good signs. In this game, it was even better. He's dominating the Geelong backline. He's their man down there. He's the interceptor. He's the one-on-one guy. He will score 70 to 80 most weeks. And that's all we need from him. He doesn't need to go 100 plus because he's only valued at like a 35. It's bloody fantastic. And if he gets to 65 to 70, he's made you enough money that you can offload him to a premium with a rookie. That's all we need. Much, much better than I think the options of Gota. Probably better than a Tom Cole, even at 40K more expensive. And I think the set position is probably the big thing for me. Yes, there's some competition down back, but I think he's the one to go there. Some people are picking Crozier. I'm not so hot on the pick, so I've gone Liam Jones instead. Teams do not bring in 31-year-old players if they expect him to play VFL. So that's why I've got him in the team. Next up on the list, we've got Ruben Jimby. So did really well in that preseason 2 game and has been flying outside of his kind of foot issue, which I think stopped him playing the intra-club the week before. Has been doing really well. Really good role either in the midfield or across halfback. And boy, oh boy, as a bench rookie or as an on-field rookie option, you can't really do any better. If another player comes around and kind of pushes him out, I could always sideways to a Tom Cole or a Gota at a pinch, but I think Jimby's the way to go. The DPP is fantastic, and being able to swing some people like I've got at the moment between that halfback and the midfield is bloody fantastic. Next up on our list is McKenna. So I know some people are kind of picking Wilmot at the moment. For me, it's not the best pick. He could come out and dominate. He could come out and be named round one, and maybe I'll sideways someone from my bench to him. But McKenna comes in as a running halfback, someone to go alongside Kadeen Coleman at Brisbane. He's a good kick. He can run. And teams, as I said with Liam Jones, aren't bringing in mature age players with AFL experience to play VFL. Brisbane are very, very smart. He's supposed to be one of Fagan's favourites. So that's why I've got him in the team at the moment. Rounding off the bench, I've got Chesser, who could become a Wilmot or a Sin, kind of depending on who's named. And but Alex Sinicotta. So has been playing really well in the Blues VFL team. Basically got picked up because Zach Williams came out injured, and they had the opportunity to be able to do that. Murkov, who ended up going to the Pies, was going to be that player. Obviously, he went across, and Sincotta, I think, at 102K is going to be fantastic value for us. He will lock in that halfback role. He did it in the VFL team. I've heard from people who've played in the VFL team that he's dominated in that position, and he's been brought in for a reason. So that's why we're picking him here. If Cowan comes in and pushes him out, I don't know how an 18-year-old kid is going to push out like a 26-year-old gun, but, we'll see what happens. If that happens, I'll have to move pieces around, which you can do in Supercoach, which is fantastic. So that's why I've got him in the team at the moment. Bench options are fine, but he should be best 22 on field for Carlton. So great value option there, and make us some really quick cash. 102K is not, what's his 19. So he should be scoring a 60 plus pretty easy, and will accelerate to 300K very, very quickly, which is what we want. The midfield is kind of the big tricky one at the moment. I've gone with the idea of picking a few guys who I think are set and forget players, or at least ones who are going to make, enough cash to upgrade to set and forget while not, negating points. But then coming in with a lot of more value options. The preseason games really showed us that I think this year, the 200 to 300K midfielders are the ones that are going to be scoring quite a lot, as long as they have the roles. Supercoach in general has moved from guns and rookies to a more mid-pricer style game. And in doing that, we're not looking for guys who are going to be keepers on field. If they're going to make enough money for you, if they're going to make 200K or 150K, which is basically 30 over their projected average, it's good enough for us in Supercoach. Them plus a rookie is going to equal a Fulham premium, which is kind of what we want. And the idea of picking the Fulham guys who are going to be, picking the guys who are going to be the Fulham premiums is the way to go for Supercoach. In saying that, my captaincy options are probably the things that I'm worried about the most this year. Being able to lock in, the best vice captain and captaincy score is something that's really important and can really differentiate yourself between, the teams that are scoring 2,100 and 2,250 in a week. That could be the real difference between you jumping 300 spots and going down 20 and stopping your progression up the ladder. Giving myself the best 1-2 punch alongside a Darcy, a Dunkley, and probably a Doherty as well, depending on who they're playing, is something that I'm really looking for. Last year, I had some trouble with the captaincy options, especially kind of just going someone like a McRae after he scored really well. I didn't have the loophole players to be able to facilitate things, so Madden's that player as well for me. We have Rory Laird kind of starting that off for us today. Has something like 6 out of the first 9 games in Adelaide, which is bloody fantastic. I think he averages a 130 there. I was going to pick Oliver, but the thing that I have between the two is that Oliver has a lot of people in his team who are going to be sharing the ball with, as opposed to a Laird at Adelaide. Oliver's been moved around already in the preseason. He's already come in a little bit injured. Yes, he might be over that now, but there's a little bit of worry there. He's got Hunter, who's now come in, who's going to be taking mid-time. He's got Angus Brayshaw, who's come in, who's going to be demanding more mid-time. And we saw in that preseason game too, that he's not the favourable player from the midfield anymore. He's not getting the ball thrown down his throat. Yes, there will be games when he scores big, but there'll be also games where he gets a sub 100. And they're the ones we're banking on early for us to be able to pick him up at a much cheaper price later. All he needs is a sub 100 score in the first 4 or 5 games to really drop his price and make it so the first kind of upgrade rounds of upgrading we do are the players that he's going to be one of those ones that would bring in. In saying that, I guess I'd call Laird my captain. My vice captain option is going to be Bont. Now, Dunkley going out, and if you didn't watch the North Melbourne game, outside of kind of North getting slaughtered, the Dogs did some really impressive things with their forward line. They are going to be running multiple tools in there, and it's going to be really devastating for teams to actually be able to stop that. The best thing about a Bont, and yes, a McRae, and yes, a Libba, I think most people are going to be having all three of them at some point in their team. Hopefully one gets DPP, but we'll see what happens. Bont is the best person to run and carry at the Dogs, grab the ball, shoot it forward as much as they can. That's why they brought him in. Well, that's why they've got him. That's why he dominated last year. And that's why he dominated in the preseason game too. Came out with a 154. It was North Melbourne, but taking that away, his role looks really good. And the fact that they don't need him to play as much forward means that he can be in that Supercoach friendly role of a midfielder who scores goals. That's what we want in Supercoach, and that's what we're going to get from Bont. Next up in the list, we do have someone who's a lot cheaper, and that's Tom Green. I'm only running 3 midfield premiums, and I think Tom Green's the best value option there to actually accelerate the cash gen and also have someone who's scoring really well. GWS are looking for him to help dominate that midfield, contested possessions, handball or kick the ball off to the distributors to score goals and do really well. They don't really have anyone else, and Tom Green's taken over kind of the Hopper style role they have there. Yes, last year he came out like a burst on fire and slowed down. Of course, he's a younger kid. He's got another preseason into him. And the best thing is, if he does that this season as well, straight away, come around 6, 7, 8, when he starts to slow down, when the GWS train maybe starts falling off its tracks, you can always upgrade him to someone else. He will be a sideways trade to a Touk Miller, to an Oliver, to a Lockie Neal at some point during early in the season. So if you're saying, Big J, why don't you just pick them to start with? Well, I basically have, and I'm getting them at a much reduced price. So that's why I've got him there. If he becomes a keeper, even better. Next up we have is Jacob Hopper. So I think everyone basically will have, where is he? Helps if I spell his name right. So Jacob Hopper brought from GWS over to Richmond. Everyone knows about Jacob Hopper. Should be averaging 90 every week, 90 to 95, and will be 500K come around 5, 6, 7. So if you don't have him in your team, you're a bit of a nuffy. 46% of people only have him. So that's 54% that don't have Jacob Hopper. Come on, guys. It's, 2 weeks till Supercoach. Our teams that are the muck around teams are finished now. We're down to business. You have to pick Hopper in your team. Another guy who I've got who kind of... Oh, I haven't gone Warple at the moment. I've gone Wangareen Miller role and going to be taking kickouts for them. So having that at a 300K price mark is fantastic. I think he came out and scored almost 100, maybe 80 to 100 in the preseason game. And that was kind of in a more congested game. The boy's got a fantastic kick. He can run, and he puts himself in the positions across the field that he can help beat to that distributor. If the pick doesn't work out, I can always sideways to a Warple. But at the moment, he's the one for me. He only needs to come out and average a 90, which I think is pretty achievable for him to be a viable Supercoach pick. 90 puts him at, a 500K price tag. Come on, guys. 90 is not that hard in Supercoach, especially when you're taking kickouts. He took 7 kickouts in the preseason game against Essendon. If he does that, that's 7 kicks and 7 effective disposals that he's going to be doing every single week. And obviously, preseason game thing can change, but these guys with set roles are the ones you really want to start picking in your team. Now, Allahan is someone that I have been watching over the preseason, someone who has had a lot of talk about him. Early pick last year, and his first year of the season didn't set the world on fire. But similar to a Green, there's a lot of space and potential at GWS to actually grow and do really well. So that's why he's in the team for me. If the pick doesn't work out, I can always sideways to someone else. But, banking on that, saying, oh, it's not going to work out, I think it's the wrong move to go. If he's 244K, so anyone who doesn't know, hopefully that's going to show up on the screen. Cool. So the magic number this year is 5.5. He's only valued at 44. So if he scores a 75, which is nothing, it's nothing in 75 is nothing. If he does that, he's getting to 400K. Him plus a rookie equals a premium. So it's not about having guys who are going to make a lot of money. It's about having guys who are going to make a lot of money who aren't a sub risk, who are best 22 and have a role. He might be behind Tom Green, Cornelio, and Kelly in that midfield mix, but he is number 4. There's not someone pushing him out, and that's why I've got him in my team. Next up, we have Ashcroft. Not much to say there. The kid came out and scored like 100 in the preseason game. I think if you don't have him, what's his ownership at the moment? It's bonkers. So if you don't have him, you're in trouble. You're a bit silly. Next one I've got is Mackenzie from Hawthorn. I spelled his name right. There you go. Mackenzie from Hawthorn. So similar to an Ashcroft, has done really well, has really cemented that position in his role. Hopefully he's not a Josh Ward of 2023, but looking at him, I think he's not going to be that player. I have shied a little bit away from Phillips at the moment, which may come to burn me. I'll have to switch some cash around and do some shifty things to make it happen. But at the moment, no. My bench at the moment is Constable, who I can easily swap with someone like a Cheshire and put him on field. Oscar Baker comes in there as well. Mate, best 22 dominates the wing. He could almost be a player you could put on field. And then the last player we've got there is Alwyn Davey. So I love these kind of young Essendon kids who are going to be doing really well. He seemed to, even when he wasn't in the forward line, he'll run around the back and stop players. He'll do a lot of things on field. And the one thing I know about Scott, kind of from coaching at North, is that he loves these players. If you're versatile, you're not stuck in, well, a forward's come back into the team, you have to go out because all you can play is forward. Davey can do a lot of things around the field, and that's why he's really good. Well, guys, that's my team for the preseason. Have a quick bit of a screenshot. So we're running with what looks to be 12 premiums. So 12 guys you could basically keep in your team for the entire time. It does have enough cash gen to accelerate across other areas as well. So the midfield's really good there. The back line seems to be quite well with Jones, Jimby, and McKenna. They should all be making their 150K pretty easy. And then Tanner Bruin and Flanders as well. Reducing the amount of rookies on field, I think is going to be a really big thing because it stops these dodgy scores. So doing that is really important for me. Yes, there's 2 weeks to go, but that's kind of what I'm rocking with at the moment. Well, guys, if you liked what you've seen, remember to subscribe to the channel. We're going slowly up to 1K subs. So that's something that we're trying to do over the next couple of weeks before the preseason starts. And obviously, we'll be continuing on with the content throughout the season as well. So remember to like, share, subscribe. We've also got our Supercoach group, and I'll put the information down that into the description. And if you like the content, let us know in the description below. If there's anyone in your team who you think, hey, Big J, you should come in and change out for someone else, let me know about them too. Not everyone's a mind reader. They can't know every pick all the time. But with the help from you guys in the community, we can make that happen. Remember, guys, here at the Centre Bounce, we do the hard work so you don't have to.